Let's look back quickly to San Antonio in the Final Four. Again, Florida beats Houston for the national championship. I have to admit, I was pulling for Houston.
Me too.
And
why were you pulling for Houston?
I just kind of I had not seen Houston very much this year. They kind of seemed like and this is I'm not trying to say anything negative about Florida. They just kind of seemed like they would be an easy team to root for. They had been together a fair amount, an older team. They played really hard. Kelvin Sampson certainly has had some chapters in his coaching history that were checkered. But look, now that's no big deal.
Isn't the biggest strike against him that he made too many phone calls?
At Indiana. Like my son, who wasn't old enough to know Kelvin Sampson, he's like, did Indiana fire Kelvin Sampson? I was like, well, yes, but it was complicated.
Son, that's when there were rules.
Yeah.
We don't live by those rules anymore.
So, and Kelvin Sampson, I don't know, Adam. He just older coach, seems like a really good coach, North Carolina guy. Houston has no impact on my Tar Heel life in any way at all. They've come up short so many times. Now, granted, this was like in the early 80s, but still. So I was kind of and they're sick. They led that game for 39 minutes and let it slip away and didn't even get a shot on that final possession. In fact, I think they turned it over, their last 3 or 4 possessions? Just a killer. Adam, to me, my biggest takeaways are something that we already kind of mentioned, and that is the veteran nature. I mean, Walter Clayton, the Final Four MVP, deservedly so. Where was he before? Iona, I think, maybe before Florida. It's where college basketball is. If you can hit it right with these older guys coming together. I mean, this was, for the most part, the second year. Florida had added, I think Elijah Martin, it was his first year, and Halk maybe was a freshman, if I remember correctly. So there were some key pieces that were new, but there were 2 or 3, 4 core guys that had been together for a year or two that were good players. I think it just speaks to that we talked about. And then, of course, Duke falling short. I mean, to me, Adam, I don't know if you feel this way. I thought Auburn was the best team in like November and December and the first half of January or something. And then I thought Duke was the best team from the middle of January until the end. Them falling short was surprising. The way they lost was obviously surprising. That would make you absolutely – I can't even imagine how sick they felt the next morning. I mean, you and I have both been there when you lose the championship game or you lose a heartbreaker in the tournament. It's the worst. I will say, for as good as Duke was, and Duke was very, very good, they had one weakness, and you saw it against the Tar Heels in the ACC tournament. When there was the combination of game pressure and on-the-ball pressure defensively, they made some mistakes. They didn't have the one Ed Cota out there or whoever that you could just give the ball to and he could get through the press or get fouled and make the free throws. They didn't have that. They had a bunch of really talented freshmen or maybe some guys who are a little bit older who maybe didn't really want the ball in that situation. And it came back to bite them. Carolina just wasn't quite good enough to finish it off and made, obviously, as we know, a mental error or two in that at the end of that game in the ACC tournament. But, Adam, I thought this game against Houston was very similar to that ACC tournament game against Carolina. Houston was just able to finish the deal.
Yeah. My only regret from this Final Four is don't love Florida, don't love Todd Golden.
Right. Todd Golden's has, I think, been cleared
of Title IX violations.
Right. But there were some very serious allegations towards Todd Golden.
And beyond that, I don't love the way he comes across. But obviously a very good basketball coach. I don't love the SEC winning.
Right.
But it's far preferable to one of the other outcomes.
No doubt.
I would have liked to see Houston win. Houston, by far the least objectionable of any of these 4 teams.
Oh, yeah. They were in the minority of teams in this tournament outside of Carolina that wasn't Duke and wasn't an SEC team that I thought could win it.
Right. So I was pulling for the Cougs, as I often do.
Adam is a Coug lover. There's no question about that.
I really debated, did I want to tweet on Sunday that it had been a great weekend to root for the Cougs?
Yeah.
And retweet a baseball score. But I decided not to because that's how mature I am. Yeah. I'm just telling you about it now.
Yeah.
That I could have done that.
That Adam had that thought.
I was going to do it. I think one thing, despite the fact that we can all agree we don't love where college basketball is, these were very good games.
Very good games.
And there have been times where you sit down and watch the Final Four and you think, oh, this is not very good. These were good games.
Well, as is always the case with the tournament, people love to see upsets early. But when the good teams don't get upset and you get to that Sweet 16, round of 8, Final Four, you get some bangers. And that was the case this year. I mean, there were some really good games in those final 2 or 3 rounds, and in particular, the Final Four in the championship game. These were really high-level teams. And even like Florida-Houston wasn't a real pretty game. Neither team shot particularly well, but it was pretty high-level basketball despite the fact that the ball wasn't going in a lot.
And I would have loved to have seen these teams play 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 5. It was that good. So
except the Duke-Houston series, that was one and done, period.
That's what makes college basketball great. You get one chance, and if you blow it, you failed, and that's the end of your year. Go home and cry. Sorry about it. Every time we touch. So San Antonio appears to be a great Final Four city. I saw one thing about maybe they're thinking about just a permanent rotation between Indianapolis, New Orleans, and San Antonio. I'd go for that.
Except for 2 of those 3 have not been kind to the Tar Heels through the years, but other than that.
But one of them has some of the greatest wins ever.
Yeah.
So 1 out of every 3 years, the Tar Heels will have one of the greatest wins ever. That's fine. But in reality, we all know in some way Las Vegas will have to be in there.
I would not have any objections to those. I mean, not that I've ever sat down and thought about it, but those are the 3 cities that I think I probably think about the most. Certainly Indianapolis and New Orleans I think about.
I don't get the fascination with Indianapolis. I've never been there one time and thought, this is awesome.
Well, Adam, there's a particular headquarters that's there that,
right.
Look, if our travel budget can be lower, that means we make even more money.
I do think you got new stadiums coming in Nashville. That's an absolute Final Four home run right there. And
Adam, tell me more about College of Charleston baseball and Nashville.
Look, the Final Four in Nashville will be one of the greatest Final Fours they've ever had, period, the end. And you got a possible new stadium coming in Chicago. I'm in. What about
might be one in Apex that Adam's excited about?
What about Chicago, Nashville, Chapel Hill? What about that? So, no objections to this Final Four, especially in one very key way. Sorry Houston didn't win. I'm already tired of Florida.
I will be interested in this. I wanted to talk about this in more fully, and it got messy at the beginning. I just think it's going to be interesting to see how people handle highly touted freshmen moving forward, because you're never going to not want talent. But I think your risk with highly touted freshmen now is if they come in and they aren't awesome, they're going to leave more than likely. Because the other part of that is not only if I leave, can I get more money, but if I leave, I'm going to make it clear to everybody that I was not the problem. And so I will be, you always want talent. How you manage some of that talent is it's never been easy. I'm not suggesting that, but I just think it's even more, the spotlight is even more on that in today's landscape.
It is a little ludicrous that you can leave and get more money playing somewhere else in college than you could get in the NBA.
Yeah, for a lot of these guys. Well, you're seeing that in the women's game, too. If I was a highly touted women's player, if I was a really good women, why would...
a few hoops to jump through before we get there, but okay.
But why would I ever go pro? What?
Right. Oh, yeah, no.
I would transfer every year
Yes.
and make a ton of money every year. You're going to make more in college than you are at the professional level in that sport, for sure. So, anyway, House case, by the way, still in limbo.
They're thinking about it.
Yeah. And anything else from basketball? We were all over the place there. I hope we touched all the points I wanted to hit on. We were kind of all over the place.
No.